What did I miss?
You missed a lovely story from Joker. And also, Plankton and Mickey are gonna buy a secret formula.
Are we finally stealing the secret formula? I'd love to see the look on Crab's face.
No, but I can just buy it for billions of dollars instead and lose absolutely no money from it.
How do you expect to go about doing that?
Because I'm filthy stinking rich,
Wow, you people think too small. Listen. I have a proposal.
What is it, Willie?
We are going to establish a colony in the state of Wisconsin.
Wisconsin? Didn't you and Sans destroy it in the battle against Chester Cheetah?
Well, yes, but that makes it ripe for colonizing. Pardon me for intruding, but wouldn't that make it uninhabitable? Well,
As the president of the council, I overrule your proposal.
You just joined this morning. You're not the president of the council.
It's the real president of the council. I still overrule your proposal. Sorry, Springtrap. It's just a flat-out terrible idea.
I miss Sans.
We all do, William. But he's in a better place now.
A better place indeed.
So first, I'll cover the basic elements of his design. Overall, he looks kind of like a mixture of Springtrap and Withered Golden Freddy. I don't know if this was intentional, but I do know that when Pizzeria Simulator first came out, I had actually thought that he was one of the Springlock victims mentioned by Phone Guy in FNAF 3 when he was in a Fredbear suit or something. It would have been a neat bait and switch back then, if I didn't hate the design. Then, when the elusive FNAF 6 dropped, we got this. I was a bit miffed. Very miffed, actually. Extremely miffed, even. Springtrap finally returned for what I thought would be the last time ever, and he looked like a complete joke. I think a lot of people share this sentiment, though there were also people who genuinely liked it, or at least the concept behind his design. I definitely was not one of those people for a very long time. Right after the release of Pizzeria Simulator, I made this image, and then this one, and this one. A lot of them, actually. I also was the first person to discover that he had bone ears to begin with. I'm not joking. Here's the first ever discovery of them. I was the one with the Ridley profile picture. I made more images about this. I made more images about this, surprise, surprise. I actually sound mad about this. Henry and William, now robbed of their star performer, had to come up with an emergency plan to replace him. Their solution was to create two new animatronics, being Fredbear 2.0 and Spring Bonnie, and have the suits built with the capability to climb inside and wear them by cranking back the endoskeleton interior with a new contraption they dubbed Springlocks. This was done so that if the animatronics got too nervous, an employee would be able to take over and perform on stage for a brief amount of time. Ignoring the Springlock failures that killed Harold the janitor and Trevor the cashier, this solution worked wonders for the company. With a much higher tolerance for large crowds, the two characters won over the hearts of many, and Williams secured a deal to make a TV show called Fredbear and Friends, with a low-budget video entertainment company. As for Harold and Trevor, though, they just kind of showed up every now and then as shadow creatures that vaguely resembled the suits they died in.
Alright, Mickey, it's time for your yearly evaluation as a council member. Last year, your promises were optimistic, but you clearly dropped the ball.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, you know exactly what we're talking about. Bring him out.
What? You're bluffing. Oswald, I can explain. I had no idea what the bigwigs were gonna do. You gotta believe me.
What on earth are you talking about? We just saw to you never baked us brownies like you promised.
I may not have the right to butt in, but I will. I think we should interrogate the mouse on what he's going crazy over. Good idea, JK. Mickey, spill it. What happened that caused you to be so paranoid?
Well, gee, Disney killed the Epic Mickey series in cold blood.
Well, that was underwhelming.
Toby Fox set out to make not only a quality character design, but went as far as to boil it down to only the core essentials. The skeleton. He made a short, stubby skeleton that says puns, and did it masterfully. How does one accomplish such a feat? It eludes me. Just looking at Sans's overworld character sprite, we can see the most necessary parts of his design. Blue coat, black shorts, and white slippers. But they're pink. They're pink. The merch shows that, but this official artwork gives him blue sneakers. Okay, so I know what this looks like. This design isn't consistent. That's bad. Foolish. Preposterous even. No, you're wrong. Sans' small outfit inconsistencies may seem like oversights on the surface. However, it's clearly obvious that they actually represent the strange nature of his character. Don't believe me? Explain then how this beautiful skeleton can teleport at a moment's notice just because he feels like it. If he can do that, surely he can change his shoes? Yes, this is quite possibly a magnificently subtle detail foreshadowing what his abilities are, all hinted at with his shoes and shirt. Yeah, sometimes he has a shirt and sometimes it's just his ribcage. The shoe explanation applies here, a very meaningful and symbolic design. But I know the question you're asking now. Why is his jacket blue? Simple. The jacket is blue as it is symbolic of Sans' hidden nihilism. He feels nothing matters due to the timelines being reset for eternity, and as his life repeats, he has lost his spark and now feels blue all the time. The jacket is a deep and complex visualization of this idea. This is Afton, otherwise known as Scraptrap. His design is the most infamous one in Five Nights at Freddy's, and for good reason. Look at him. If you aren't funny, you could even make a joke about Peanuts or Jimmy Neutron right now. Now, before you raise your pitchforks over me daring to rag on the work of the absolute saint that is Scott Cawthon. 1. He's made a ton of banger designs in FNAF, and in older projects like The Desolate Hope, his skills really shine. He's good at what he does, and I do not think he loses sleep over someone saying this funny rabbit man looks stupid. Having said that, this funny rabbit man looks stupid. Come 1993, the place probably gets like 2 customers a week, and there are cobwebs everywhere, and they got desperate for a security guard after the head guy died to all 4 animatronics in the restaurant. Good thing he left some voice messages to help out the new guy. Speaking of the new guy, remember Michael Afton? He applied. He also called himself Mike Schmidt when he joined the Fazbear family, likely due to his father's tendency to murder entire rooms of people every other Tuesday. Michael had a very useful skill that he inherited from Cassidy after the boy vanished from space-time and fused his mind with Michael's, sitting still and hiding like a coward. So naturally, Michael did a fantastic job for his Five Nights at Freddy's, and then even worked some overtime hours for the 6th and 7th nights. What a champ. Unfortunately, Michael didn't get the memo that tampering with animatronics isn't recommended for a healthy work environment. Previous employee Fritz Smith learned this the hard way. Since Michael cranked the character's AI to the maximum setting just for the challenge, Henry decided to fire him for his own well-being and just blamed it on him forgetting to apply deodorant before coming to work that night. Most FNAF fans, myself included, had expectations high for the inevitable 6th game in the series, and that included the return of Springtrap. In my mind, he would simply return as an altered version of Dark Springtrap that made minor adjustments to make him stand out from the original. Obviously, this did not happen, and as Pizzeria Simulator ended, it seemed like that was the one time Springtrap would get to return, and that opportunity felt wasted due to Scraptrap being such a downgrade. If we knew that this was just a one-time deal then, and that the original Springtrap would get to come back later on, I think it would have stung far less than it did. Though, weirdly enough, I still see people treat Scraptrap as if he replaced Springtrap forever, and that they miss the original. Like, bro, he's right there in 2 games and a bad spinning simulator. Regardless, there's obviously another factor to Scraptrap that's often criticized, which, of course, is how he could possibly look the way he does canonically. First off, the corpse looks completely different. How? Did he grow his bones back? The answer is no. Something about both Springtrap and Scraptrap's design is that the details of William Afton's corpse inside them are only shown to so much detail, so it's not really necessary to put stuff there that doesn't need to be. In Springtrap's case, he had his endoskeleton and some basic flesh to give off the idea of his body being mangled in a Springlock suit without going to unnecessary lengths to do so. This also is likely a result of Scott not being great at modeling humans, since we do get to see Springtrap with a more realistic body in the Twisted Ones graphic novel. Scraptrap, from what I feel, is intended to be William Afton taking advantage of a more free form after getting himself out of the previous suit. This idea mainly comes from the character's name being simply William Afton in the credits. Also, at the time, the character only spoke with this design, so it seemed like Scraptrap was capable of speech while Springtrap wasn't. However, Special Delivery throws a wrench into that idea, since Springtrap speaks with the same voice as Scraptrap. Take that as you will. Regardless, his corpse is prioritized in this design instead of an animatronic endoskeleton, so there's far more complexity to it than the spaghetti guts Springtrap had. Back to the idea that it's inconsistent, It is, but canonically I don't think it means anything, and it has no reason to. The question I've seen raised most often about the idea of him switching suits is how he could even escape the spring locks. Isn't he permanently trapped? Well, no. The FNAF novels, while being in an alternate timeline, give some insight as to how things function in the overall universe, and William Afton managed to escape a springlock endoskeleton twice. Once, he survived and was just left scarred. The other, he surgically removed himself from the endoskeleton after being spring-trapped for a year. Given that Scott wrote The Fourth Closet at the same time he developed Pizzeria Simulator, I think that idea of William abandoning his mantle as Springtrap seeped into the games as well as Scott could carry it over, given his modeling limitations. As for how William escaped the suit in the game's timeline, there's no solid answer, and I honestly don't think Scott ever thought of one. He's the only scrap animatronic not to have some sort of explanation to his design change, but given how the others are, I think he just assumed people could fill in the blanks fairly easily. The assumption I and most others go with is that Springtrap found an old Spring Bonnie suit at an abandoned location, did some switcheroo shenanigans, and made its debut as a different looking green rabbit. I will say that the people who think it's the same suit but shrunk or damaged from the fire, Dark Springtrap is right there, I saw him.
30 years later, some surfer dude decided it would be funny to open a horror attraction based on the Freddy's locations due to their discomforting animatronics and history of child murder incidents. Before he could open the location, though, he wanted to find a real animatronic to toss into the attraction and sit there, I guess. Lo and behold, he managed to find the one animatronic that had a dead serial killer inside it, and despite the probably awful smell, he just threw it in there without a care in the world. Also, Springtrap continued his age-old method of murder by just casually walking up to the security guard and staring at them. 5 nights later, and the faulty wiring in the attraction shorted out, and the entire building burned to the ground. Springtrap turned out okay though. Granted, he lost his pants, and he wasn't gonna just live with that. So, after escaping the charred remains of the building, he managed to find the old Fredbear's location and dig up another Spring Bonnie suit to get inside after painfully prying his tangled up guts out of the old one.
And finally, a more mummified looking head to help make it clear it's not a regular skull, but rather discolored skin. A specific problem with the original redesign was just this dumb oversight where I made his pelvis way too small. So, I fixed that here. Another problem with the old one is that in trying to preserve the idea of him escaping the endoskeleton, he has nothing to keep him from just crumbling instantly. So, to fix that problem while trying to retain the same idea, I have endoskeleton pieces from Springtrap incorporated here to convey the idea that Afton tried to escape the Springlock suit, but couldn't get out completely. For the parts of him that did get freed of the endoskeleton, I have wires wrapped around them at the joints to hold them together, since otherwise they'd have nothing to stay in place. Well, the plushie looks vaguely like a Bob Tropica character, which is fitting given 18-year-old heart is limping in sorrow, desperately anticipating that Disney acknowledges Epic Mickey again. How do you make something with a premise so cool and decide not only to end it abruptly, but to completely ignore the stuff it brought back into the limelight for the first time in decades? Disney was all giddy to finally get back Oswald, and thanks to the guy responsible for Madden 08's existence, they traded his bestie to Universal to acquire the rights to a cartoon rabbit nobody cared about. What has Disney done with Oswald since they shut down Junction Point? Well, they denied Square Enix permission to use him in Kingdom Hearts, and random animators sneak him into Mickey Mouse shorts whenever they can. Seriously, why? For the longest time, I assumed the narrative everyone else was figuring, being Epic Mickey 2 underperformed and caused the closure of Junction Point. But then, oh, here's Did You Know Gaming's video on Epic Mickey, and lo and behold, turns out the game didn't even have time to flop before Disney pulled the plug. And the reason? Oh, mobile games are the future, and consoles will be dead in like a week, lol. You had this franchise with a perfect premise and so much potential that had another sequel and a DuckTales spin-off in the works that had so many cool ideas that would have been phenomenal to see in video games, and you murder it for Where's My Water, which you also wind up abandoning in the long run. At the very least, the premise of Epic Donald wound up being the same general idea that DuckTales 2017 had, and that show is one of my favorite cartoons ever. And then it turns out there was a pitch for an Epic Mickey movie that got canned. Come on! I cannot state enough how frustrating the death of the Epic Mickey series is to me, because it all got canned for no reason, and the forgotten characters and worlds it brought back to the table all got abandoned a second time! At the very least, it seems like everyone still remembers it and enjoys talking about it, but come on.